So we're continuing our series, and we're having so much fun talking to our advocates. So many nuggets that are taken from our series, and we're like, this is awesome. You never know what you get into until you're in it, and you're like, oh my God, I'm learning, and that's what we want to do. I'm super excited about this series coming up, actually this session on holistic health. Obviously, I'm a yogi. I really preach internal sort of spiritual medicine, wellness, and I know that you have a lot of experience in that too because you're on your own journey of self-healing and self-care. I know that's been a buzzword for the longest, but what does that really mean? What do you think this conversation is going to lead into?
Oh, I think it's going to lead into a lot of aha moments, right? In the words of our favorite Oprah, a lot of aha moments and then a lot of awareness. Right? As you talked about, I've been actively seeking the better me for some years now. And the one thing I'm addicted to is stillness. And I really can't wait to speak to the folks today about the quality of yoga and practicing meditation and what it does to your psyche. It's not just that it gives you a stress reliever, but it turns on a certain part of your mind and your brain that allows you to accept things differently. It allows you to have a new perspective in how you view different scenarios and situations. I can honestly say my temperament has changed. The way I parent has changed, the way I love has changed, my intentions have changed. So to be able to hear from people who do this all day, every day, and practice this is just a gift, right? And it's something that I'm really looking forward to because a lot of people of color are still, we come from a space where we question things like yoga and things Eastern. And it does, and for me, what I've realized in my journey is that there's nothing new under the sun. Some of these practices have been out there since the beginning.
Right.
And the Western society kind of moved away from them because we couldn't commercialize them. So you can't commercialize sacred.
Right.
Right.
I love it, girl. You're speaking my language. Yeah. And it's so important too, because it's not just Eastern, right? Because even as I discover in my practice and when I teach mindfulness from the earth, from the sage sticks that belong to the earth, no region or whatever, only where it grows. But even African culture, we talk about voodoo and healing and plants. And so it belongs to everyone, right?
Absolutely.
And it's how we express it and how we talk about it. And I hope that it's a trend for African Americans, even now in the newest centuries, for the generations to come. Like, we don't need a pill. We don't need a prescription to feel good and to learn how to really heal ourselves from the earth. I mean, it's so amazing. So I'm excited for the conversation. And girl, let's take a note and make sure we're sharing and tweeting it out and making sure that we're amplifying what we're really doing here with the voices and the capturing the spirit of being seen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you.
Welcome, Georgette. I am so happy to start this conversation. When I heard about holistic practices and we were going to be focusing about this, I could not wait to chat and speak to someone who's doing it every day. So thank you so much.
Of course, it's my passion, it's my heart, and any opportunity that I'm able to have a deeper conversation about wellness, I'm there for it. All my life, I didn't even realize that everything has been leading me to this point. The things that I was interested in, even as a child, are the things I get to do now. I loved health and wellness before there was like a definition of what that was. And so having an opportunity to speak with another woman of color about healing modalities just uplifts my spirit.
Right, you already spoke my love language, right? When you're talking about those breadcrumbs, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you're on that journey and you embrace yoga and meditation, you begin to kind of see that blueprint a little bit better. Would you agree?
Oh, gosh, yes. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my cousin would make fun of me because I had like a whole nighttime routine. And I realized I was creating my own self-care rituals. I was doing my journaling. Who does that at 12? But I did.
An enlightened person, right? Somebody who knows the calling on their life. Now, as a person who's owning the lifestyle space and an influencer in your space, I'm sure you've noticed the disparities between our community and a number of other communities. What are some of the things that you're seeing and some things that you feel we can do to combat those disparities?
I remember when I first began teaching yoga here in Dallas, there was a handful of teachers that looked like me. And instead of being upset at the dynamics, I just decided to work as hard as I could to create opportunities for me to flourish. And when I felt discouraged and when I noticed that I wasn't getting the same opportunities as my colleagues, I said, well, if they can't find you, they can't build you up. So I remember scheduling a photo shoot for all the Black yoga teachers in Dallas. And I put out a message and I said, I have a photographer, let's just all come together. And I was astonished with how many women did show up. And it was such a wonderful opportunity for us to build and connect together. And from there, I was able to get the word out. I started to do more TV segments even about it. And I realized I can't complain about problems I'm not trying to find solutions for.
Can we say that again? Okay. and in the words of Queen Latifah, UNITY. Hey, you got to do it. But no, seriously, I think that in this pandemic world that we're living in, we're seeing a number of trends. And I continue to tell people I am in awe of the greatness that I see unfolding, the gifts that people are unearthing within them, right? And there's so many trends. And I'm sure you have observed some, especially in the yoga space. I'm sure you're on social media seeing all these great Sisters Yoga Network. Talk to me about the trends you're seeing and that you want to embrace, right?
Well, I think what's really powerful is that the more that people see themselves reflected in either media, in placements, in ads, they're more encouraged to continue on that path. So thanks to social media, I feel like we're now seeing that wellness doesn't also have to look one way. Just because you don't maybe connect to yoga, you might love running, you might like boxing, you might like slow living or minimalism. And I think that the definition of self-care is evolving and it's broadening. And I like that as well. I've always told people like, hey, you don't have to love yoga as much as me, but you do need moments to pause and breathe.
Oh,
right?
No, I love that. I mean, literally, I'm listening, I'm like, yes, girl, yes. But, as you think about unearthing your alignment, right? And identifying what works for you. So how did you, as a Canadian, right, having a U.S. experience, right? Let's talk about that. First of all, there are Black people in Canada.
They are.
Yes.
There are.
They are there. And how did you unearth, your calling? Obviously, it was innate as a child, and there were little breadcrumbs, but what was it that made you say, aha?
Honestly, when I first moved to Dallas, it was such a culture shock for me, and I went into depression, so to speak. And it was a conversation with my mom who reminded me, like, you could either stay there, make it work, or come back home. And sometimes you just need to hear that direct, firm statement of, it's either this or that, but you have to make a choice. And so when I chose Dallas officially, it started with my mindset. And that was such a deep awakening for me because I realized that the path that I was on was showing me to pursue teaching yoga full time. And once I decided to go with it and do it, I unearthed so much more opportunities. Like, I always say, like, God will give you, he'll give you the soil, but you got to plant and you got to nurture it. And so this dream of mine has been growing for a while. And the more that I stay on this path, I find the more direction I receive. So moving here was not easy, but growing here has been great.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. Our community is no stranger to challenges, right?
Yes.
Or obstacles to overcome. But at some point, we have to work together and decide, this is the path I'm going, and this is how we elevate. What are some of the things you feel in the self-care realm and the holistic realm that we can do and consciously make efforts to just move forward, to move the needle?
First and foremost is to realize that we do deserve it. I think certain luxuries our community and our people have felt like it's so far removed from our lives that we don't even think we can have it. So first is realizing, like, no, you deserve self-care, and it doesn't mean that you're being lazy. It doesn't mean that you're giving up. And it actually means that you're pouring back in. We have a lot of past traumas, and most of us don't even really recognize how it impacts all the facets of our lives. So things like therapy, oh my gosh, maybe not working 4 or 5 jobs. Like, the hustle doesn't have to be so permeated in our cells and our DNA, because there's a lot of growth and progress in stillness. So first and foremost, it starts with our minds. And I think that's why I communicate to anyone who's willing to listen that sometimes it's just sitting back down and realizing what serves you and what's taken away from you.
Oh, that's excellent advice. Now, as a Black woman, a woman of color in the yoga space,
Yes.
right? Traditionally, our cultures do not embrace things that are outside of, First Baptist and A&M, and that becomes a challenge. How have you navigated those conversations and educating people that this isn't a religious movement?
Right. It's interesting. I never really came into conversations about that until I moved to the South. And I was like, oh, I'm in the Bible Belt. Hold a second. I'm not, praying to a deity while I'm on this mat. I've always came at it as this is where I feel very closely connected to God. I was like, movement and stillness makes me more appreciative of the temple that I live in. This time to be more with my own breath sets up my foundation for prayer. So I've always come into the conversations in regards to God and yoga just from the simple aspect of being a Christian, and also not making people feel like they're forced to understand my perspective, but to give them a window into it.
Acceptance.
Yeah.
Right? Giving people something that we haven't always gotten.
Right.
I think that's a
That was awesome, by the way.
Well, thank you. No, that's a phenomenal thing. I think that oftentimes we haven't had the privileges of having room to explore.
Yes.
You talked about the 4 or 5 jobs, not because we want them, because we need them, right? When we talk about economic development and we talk about finding all these tools and resources to help us be a better us. So if you had a time machine, which we're all looking for, right? What would you go back and tell yourself, the 15-year-old you who's struggling to find her way, to figure out how to plant her flag? What advice do you have for her in association with finding stillness?
First and foremost, I would tell myself that you don't have to stick to the plan you set for yourself. Because and the reason why I'm going to go back to that, because I started practicing yoga long before I even thought of doing it full time. I had every excuse in the book because, well, I went to college, I got my degree in this corporate job is where I'm supposed to be. I had determined this path of success to look only one way. But all the time, my spirit was leading me in the direction that I'm in now. And I think if I could talk to my younger self, I would be like, it's okay to change the plan. Yeah. It might not be a huge, significant thing to say, but that's what landed on my heart.
Yeah. There's somebody looking at this video right now who's having that pivot moment, that internal dialogue. Mm-hmm. Is this for me? Is this not for me? And that there might be someone who's a person of color, right?
Yeah.
What are 3 things you would tell them to do right now to help them move forward in their journey of the change?
Be very confident in what it is for you. People are going to have an issue with the choices you make with your life, but they are not living your life.
Yeah.
That's one. And obviously, I think we can both agree that sometimes the people that are the closest to us can give us the most resistance. So you have to get really firm in that internal conversation with yourself and maybe that higher power, if you choose to believe in that, to make a decision that really impacts you. Also, while you're building onto a greater dream and purpose, you might still have to muddle in the dirt a bit. And the reason why I bring that up is I did teacher training while I was still in a corporate job because I still needed to pay my bills. You can have the hustle that's paying you while you're building the dream of where you're going. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
A third thing I would say is look for people doing what you want to do and seek out mentorship. And also, if someone says they don't have the time to mentor you right now, don't take that as a slight. Look at it as them being very honest with you. And then say, well, who else would you recommend? The first no. Oh my gosh, I could go on now that I think about it. The first no is not the end. I think that's a really big thing to realize.
That's powerful. You're going to get a lot of no's.
Right.
No's strengthen me. I always say no's
Yes!
that's a confidence building muscle, because to have the tenacity to keep asking when you are getting no, all it takes is one yes.
One yes.
Yeah.
And it'll feel so good when you get it.
Yeah. So again, I want to focus and kind of revisit this pandemic world we're living in, right? Because we have seen so many people struggle with being alone and in silence, right? So how do you feel your take on lifestyle and wellness has really helped impact your followers as an influencer and as a person in this space? How have you helped people speak up when those times were dark?
I think being honest and communicating raw and real emotions to let people know that I'm not just in this like, oh, like there's more to me than that. I just take my challenges with grace. I give it to myself and I try to extend it to others. The influencer space is really interesting because I find that people want you to be very transparent, but sometimes you're not ready to be. And I think it's good to come back to yourself first before giving it out.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
The pandemic made me realize that I needed to slow down. I was in teaching 20 plus classes a week, raising kids, trying to build and expand my brand and, work on those dreams. And then the pandemic forced me to stop. So I posted a lot about stillness during the pandemic. I was like, I kind of looked at it as a blessing. I knew a lot of people found it very difficult. And I appreciate that lens as well. But for me, it was an awakening. It made me a better person.
There's that word again, awakening, right? There's something there. Now, your brand is called Flow, right? Yes. What does flow mean to you?
Flow means finding ways to add to your life rather than take it away. I want to flow with ease through challenges. I want to flow with ease through gratitude. I wanted there to be synchronicity between mind, body, and spiritual health. And that is kind of a word that has just really stuck with me because I've flowed through many different phases of my life. And when there's been challenges, I was able to overcome them.
Excellent. And I think we're going to flow right on into the exit of this interview. Thank you so much for being with us.
Of course,
I have totally enjoyed chatting with you.
I really appreciate this conversation, and I am grateful to now have your acquaintance.